Help me grow, fast or slow, as long as I know you're digging for gold. Help me learn, soft or stern, as long as I know you're digging for gold. Life's a movie, the ultimate trip. You should have been told you'd be digging for gold. Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Digging for Gold. I'm Dan Goldberg, as you probably know by now. And don't forget, you can subscribe on YouTube and go to dan.goldberg, on Spotify, on Instagram, and on TikTok. Just go to the bottom of dangoldberg.com and click on those icons. Today, for all you movie fans, we got a movie guy who's amazing. He's a writer. He's a producer. He's an editor. Right? I mean, you've done.
It's been a while before I really edited anything, but I know how to edit.
You co-wrote, and you wrote, and you've done. I'm looking at my notes because there's so many things he's done. I got to make sure I get them all in here. He co-wrote the feature film PlanB. You know, the comedy feature film. That's Brandon Tamburri. He's sitting right across from me. Look at this. You ready for this? And. He worked with, let's see, Jamie Lee from HBO's Crashing, John Heder from Napoleon Dynamite, Tom Berenger from one of my favorite movies, Platoon, okay, Shannon Elizabeth from American Pie, another great movie, and Kate Flannery from The Office, one of my favorite TV shows. And now he has a company called Joke Zero. Writes comedies.
Yeah, comedy. I'd say a comedy studio nowadays.
That's pretty cool. That's very cool. So how did you get into the business? Where'd you go to school?
So I went to school at St. Joe's, which is in West Philadelphia.
Yeah.
I was there. I started off as a film major. And at St. Joe's, at least back then, it was a film and theater, like dual major. Right. I wasn't super interested in acting at all. I was more behind the scenes. So they had me signed up to take acting classes and theater and whatnot. Right. I wasn't that interested in that, so I decided to switch to a business major. So my major is entrepreneurship, and I got a film minor. With the film minor, I was still able to take every film class I wanted. I focused specifically in screenwriting, and then I didn't have to do any theater classes. And I got a business degree.
That is very cool.
So yeah, I went to St. Joe's. After that, I was even during that, I knew I wanted to work in film, even with the entrepreneurship major. Right. So I was just volunteering on film sets anywhere that was in the area. If I heard a movie was coming, I would try to get in touch with them and be a production assistant. A lot of times I wasn't getting paid. Eventually I did get paid and worked my way up to like some bigger projects. And once I graduated, I got a job at NFL Films. That was like my first actual job.
Steve.
I didn't actually know Steve.
Oh yeah, Steve was an old friend of mine. He used to be a patient of mine at 4S.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I unfortunately didn't get to overlap with him. I was there 2016 was when I graduated college and worked there. I ended up leaving, and I got a job at a company called Palmstar, which is a pretty big production and finance company.
In the area? In Philly?
Surprisingly, yes. It originally was in L.A., and the founder of that company established himself out in L.A. He was from the Philly area, but went out to L.A., produced a bunch of movies, and then decided to move back to Philly. And we were working out of really the main line of Philadelphia.
That's where that was.
But we were working on like legitimate big Hollywood studio movies, which was really surprising and great for me just as a 21 or 22-year-old.
Well, so were they produced in Philly, a lot of the movies?
We were mainly working remotely. We didn't actually film anything in Philly while I was there.
You know, you may not know this, you probably do know this, that the original Hollywood was in Philadelphia.
I have heard some. I know New Jersey also, big Hollywood area, and now New Jersey's making a comeback too. Yeah,
it's great. I think Philadelphia, New Jersey, this area has so much. Because we get the mountains, just like in Colorado, in LA. We got the ocean. We got all the things. You know, we're close to New York, we're close to DC. So the next movie that comes up, give me a call. I'll star in it. I mean, I won't even charge you a lot. How's $35 and I'm in. Okay.
Yeah, I hope I can bring another movie to this area.
That would be great. You know, I'm kidding around, but Sharon Pinkinson, you know Sharon?
I haven't talked to her for a while, but I do know Sharon. I've met her a few times.
Yeah, she headed up the film division here in Philadelphia. And she's an old friend, her and Joe, her husband. And they brought a lot of movies to Philly. So did Sylvester Stallone. Mm-hmm. He's from here, you know. A lot of his Rocky stuff was done here and L.A., but here. So you go to St. Joe's and you minor in film, but it's a major part of your major.
Yeah, so the way I looked at it at that point is, one, I'd have a business degree to fall back on if it didn't work out in film, and two, what I've kind of learned throughout just getting experience working on film sets even back then and once I graduated is that film is a business. It's the business of film, and every movie is a business, every TV show is a business, and people like to be making money. You're not really doing it for free. Well, a lot of people are, but you don't ideally want to be doing it for free. So I was able to take a lot of those things I learned about entrepreneurship and business and apply them to the business of film, and I think that really helped me out a lot when I graduated. It gave me an edge up because most of these students that were coming out at the same time as me, as well as even still to this day, they graduate and they might know a lot about camera lenses and shot selections and things like that, but they might not necessarily know anything about actually running a business. Yeah,
and well, you know, I had up the business management major at Temple, and I taught also for years about business at Penn State and at Kutztown University. And even at Rosemont, and which is now part of Villanova, and I taught at Villanova. It's interesting to me that a lot of people, they see entertainment, and they don't understand that's business. Even this is a business. It's a business. You know, costs money. You need to be in a studio, the whole bit. You have to. You all right?
Okay. Just shifting my foot a little bit with this thing down here.
Because I
leg of the table.
I have a. I don't know, pinched nerve or something in my back. So if I start screaming in the middle of stuff, it's only because of that. So when you got into this, you said you worked to some degree for free, right?
When I was in college, I was pretty much going on, you mentioned Sharon Pinkerton, the Philadelphia Film Office has a great website, still around today, called film.org, so shout out to them. And they have a great job board. So I was pretty much going on there, and if there's even a short film, any kind of feature film, whatever it was, even if they weren't looking for crew members or a production assistant is like the lowest member of the film set. I would just send an email. If it was like a casting call, I would say, hey, I'm not an actor, but I'd love to be a PA, production assistant on your movie. I'll work for free. Wow. And a lot of the time people would say yes. And then from going to sets, you can meet people. And then eventually I started getting invited back from other crew members like, hey, this guy's good. Let's bring him to the next one. And then I would get paid eventually.
That's pretty cool. It's funny because Francesca Francois, who was a very early guest on our podcast, she is an agent, a talent agent and a literary agent. And her office is in Manhattan. And she said that when she first started out, she called an agency and said, I'll work for free at the desk. And if it works out, after 2 weeks, if you still want me, then you can pay me. And that's what happened. And now she has her own agency, and she's doing really pretty well.
I know people always say don't work for free, and I'm not an advocate of that. But at the same time, if you have no experience in an industry and you want to learn from people, just work for free for a little bit. Don't do it for years, but 2 weeks at a desk. Or for me, I wasn't necessarily volunteering for like a 30-day movie. It was more so like, we're filming a movie for a couple weeks, and I would do it like in between college classes or on a week. A lot of these films are shooting on weekends if they're really low budget. So I'd go for a weekend, something like that.
But you're bringing up a good point about a low budget film. When people make a movie, and we see films on television or Netflix or Apple or wherever, a lot of streaming stuff now. It's different than when I was a kid. How do they make money? How does a low-budget film make money?
So in a case like that, I'd say it's honestly, first off, it's getting tougher and tougher.
Right.
But historically, you would make an independent film, and then once it's finished, you would sell it to one of the studios. You could maybe get into a film festival. There's like the Sundance Film Festival or Toronto.
Lighthouse.
Yeah, Lighthouse is actually a very good one in the area. So there's a lot of film festivals, and at the bigger ones like Sundance, Toronto, Tribeca, South by Southwest.
Con.
Yep, exactly. Distributors and streamers will go to these festivals and look to pick up films. And historically, or if it's a big hit at one of the festivals, you might sell it for millions of dollars. Historically, if you had a high quality film and you made it for a reasonable budget, you would be pretty well off, I think, on that film. Nowadays, with all these streaming platforms, it's getting tougher and tougher because I don't think that the streaming platforms really, I'd say, kind of to sum it up, is that people are still learning this business model and what it looks like, because nowadays not that many films are going to theaters. There's no longer DVDs that used to be a big chunk of change for these films, especially comedies, which is what I work in. I grew up with DVDs, and maybe you didn't see a film in a theater, but then you got a DVD, you passed it around with your friends, and that's how you really learn to love a lot of these films. But now with streaming, you might watch a film once, and then you're really not watching it that many more times after that. Maybe you are, maybe some people.
So you make a low-budget movie, and you go to one of these festivals. And how do you set the price? What would a low budget movie cost to make? What's the range?
So there's some people that can make a film for next to nothing. It might not be the highest quality. You can make a movie for $25,000, $50,000. I like to think that if you're doing a movie like by the books and every person is getting paid like $300,000, I think would be like a low budget movie where like all the actors are getting paid. It's a union movie with SAG. And the crew members, for the most part, are all paid. And you're paying for locations and things like that. If you have friends or connections, or maybe you're a filmmaker and you're friends with a bunch of crew members or people that have camera gear or sound equipment, you can definitely do it for cheaper than that.
Well, so they go to these film festivals, and they sell a $300,000 movie to a studio, right? It's basically who buys it, right? Well, they must want to sell it for more than it costs them.
Yeah, so ideally you want to, and there are certain examples now that still happen where you might make a low budget movie and you sell it for way more. Like one famous example, you mentioned John Heder, who starred in my film PlanB. He was in Napoleon Dynamite, and that film, I believe, had a budget of $400,000. And it went to the Sundance Film Festival, and it got picked up by a studio, and then it came out in theaters, and it made, I think, like over $40 million at the box office. So that was a major hit. That doesn't happen that often. Nowadays, it happens less. And with streaming, a lot of the deals are just revenue share deals. So you might get picked up by a streaming platform, and you might make your film for $300,000, and you don't get any upfront money for it. And then as the film gets views and generates ad revenue, because now like Amazon and there's Tubi that you can watch a film on Tubi that has ads. There's a lot of others now too. When someone's watching it, it's not much, but you might get like 4 cents or something like that. And then over time, money will continue to come in, and whoever the studio is that picks up the film will get a percentage at the top. It might be like a 70-30 split or an 80-20 split.
80-20, the studio or the filmmaker?
The filmmaker is getting more. But there's also a bunch of expenses the studios need to recoup. Something like making a trailer or making a poster, or if there is any kind of theatrical release, like that is expensive also.
And PR.
Yep, exactly. Different press opportunities. So there's a lot of expenses the distributor goes into, and that's what a filmmaker is ideally looking for when you're partnering with a distributor, because a filmmaker might spend $300,000 and make a movie or find investors to fund it. But once they sell or give the film away to a distributor, they might not know anything about actually trying to release it or marketing that film.
That makes sense.
I'll get into this a little bit more later down in the conversation, but I recently expanded my company, Joke Zero, into distribution when I mentioned it's a comedy studio. Originally, I started it to do production, and then as I learned more about the business, and after my film PlanB was released through a different distributor, not Joke Zero, I felt like I learned a lot about distribution and wanted to focus a lot on that. But I am still directing and writing when I can.
Well, it's interesting because Francesca talked about that. She works a lot with streamers. She was ahead of the game when she worked with streamers. It's fascinating to me because I was in the entertainment business, as we talked about before we went on, but on a different platform. And I look at it now as what's happening on the major side. Like, I wonder who funds a $20 million movie if there's a $20 million movie or a $5 million movie. That's all done from registered investors, I would think, things like that.
Yeah, so a lot of times now, like a studio film, and even like Netflix can be considered a studio now.
Right.
They just have their own money and they can just finance their own films. For something like an independent film that's not done through a studio, my film PlanB, for example, I grinded and I raised all of that money myself. So that was a totally independent film. We did it without a studio, and then once the film was totally finished, we sold the film to a distributor, which is Quiver Distribution. So they're not as big as like a Netflix or something like that, but they're, I'd say, like a mid-tier, very reputable distributor in the industry.
Didn't you say A24 is basically like a private equity firm that does movies?
I could say some people could classify A24 like that. They're very much creative and they're great marketers. I worked with A24 on a film called Hereditary. So I mentioned I started my career working at a company called Palm Star. We made a movie called Hereditary that was, again, an independent film. Palm Star is a little bit, at least at the time, was a little bit bigger of an independent production company that also did financing. So Palm Star would produce and finance films. So for Hereditary, we found the script, actually produced and financed it. We filmed it in Salt Lake City, and then that film premiered at Sundance, and we partnered with A24 to be the distributor. And now A24 is actually financing and producing films as well, and they're a much bigger studio than they were when Hereditary came out, but I believe they are still buying films at Sundance and the other major festivals too.
It's an interesting business. It's everything that goes on behind the scene. You know, you see this thing, it's on TV or it's on in the theater, and you don't think about how it got there, a lot of people. By the way, I think I told you this too. My students, when I said you were going to be on, and I said Hereditary, I read a whole bunch of things, and they went crazy for it. They said they loved it.
Yeah, even that movie came out in 2018, and I still get people that will hear I was involved, and they love it. I'm happy it held up. I've always been a comedy person, and that's a total opposite from a comedy movie. It's like a very intense, scary horror film. But I do love horror as a consumer. I'm not. I maybe would make more horror films, but mainly as a consumer, I like to watch them. And yeah, I'm just glad that it really held up, and I was thankful to be an associate producer on that movie, and that was like my first producing credit. And it was just a great experience being able to work on a film.
They loved it. It was like everybody was like talking about it in the class. It was very cool. It was very cool. When we talk about movies, when I was a kid, everybody knows I say this, during the Civil War, fought for the North, okay, I would go to a movie theater. You know, they had movie theaters back then. What the heck's going on with movie theaters today? They hang it in there. I mean, what's happening with AMC?
I still like to go to the movies. I definitely went to the movies way more when I was younger than I do now. Actually, like pre-pandemic, I was seeing at least one movie a week in theaters, which I really enjoyed. Now I live in the suburbs a little bit, and I could walk to the theater before. Now I have to drive, so I'm not going as much. But I still like to go. I hope people start going again. It's expensive though too. That's another thing as well. I know if you go with two people and you want to get popcorn and candy and soda and everything, you're going to probably spend like $75 total for both of you.
Yeah, it's like going to a baseball game anymore.
Yeah, it really is. That's even more expensive too.
It is even more expensive.
You're paying $30, $40 to park and another $30 or $40 on
for
food.
the ticket too. There's the ticket, but how many of those places have closed? Theaters.
I think there's definitely quite a bit that have closed. You'll obviously still see the AMC, Regal, some of the bigger ones.
Movie
like
Tavern.
That. Yeah, there's definitely still a lot of theaters out there, but I have seen some that have closed, and the box office numbers are down. I know just this past week, I haven't seen it, but Project Hail Mary, that came out and has apparently done really well at the box office. So,
I want to see that.
Yeah, so it's great to see that there are films like that are still doing really well. I think part of the problem that I've learned is that before, if you didn't go see a movie in theaters, you'd have to wait a long time to then get it on DVD, where you're also paying $20 or $30 for it.
Right.
Where now, if you don't see it in the theater, you can just assume, okay, it's probably going to be on Netflix in like 2 months or Amazon in 2 months. And people are already paying for Netflix and Amazon and HBO and all of these different streaming platforms that they're not really incentivized to go out to a movie theater and spend another potentially $75 or more. If you have a family, say you have a family of like 4 children and they want to go to the movies and it's the whole family, you're spending well over $100 to bring all the kids.
It's wild.
And they're making the window sometimes shorter in between release and streaming. Or like sometimes now studios will want to put it in theaters just to qualify awards or something, and then they really get it on their platform, right?
Yeah, exactly. So my movie PlanB, it came out in 9 theaters, but it was also available on video on demand the same day. So that's not technically a streaming platform, but that means you could go on either Amazon or Apple or there's like Google Play. There's a few different ones. And
Comcast had something.
Yeah, exactly. Comcast, Xfinity.
Yeah.
I think DirecTV probably does. But you go on and you have to actually pay for it. Regardless of whether you have Amazon Prime or whether you have Apple TV, you can go to their, I'd say their store, and you can rent movies or buy movies.
$3.99
exactly.
to rent it. Yeah. It's up for 2 days or 3 days. You have.
Yeah, so PlanB was available through there the same time it was in theaters. So you could think people don't really want to go see it in theaters and they can just pay $4 or whatever it is to watch it at home. Sometimes it's a little more. I think PlanB was either 4 or 5 to rent, and then you could buy it for maybe 10 or 12, something like that. And that's pretty standard. Sometimes it might be a little more. If it's a bigger movie, you might rent it for like $20, or you can also buy it for more than that.
How many people buy them? Do you know?
I think it really depends on the movie. Like, I haven't been involved in a movie like big enough in scale to really see like millions of dollars in those rentals. Like for something like PlanB, it wasn't a ton, but people did actually rent it, which is nice to see. And
That's
even
very cool.
now, like, I'll still see the royalty statements and things like that. And people are still occasionally will rent it or buy it, even though you can watch it for free now. It's on Amazon Prime and Tubi for free.
I saw it for free on Fandango. They have a streaming service.
Yeah, shout out to Fandango Home. It's for free on there too. But you actually can still rent it or buy it on Fandango, and then you can watch it with no ads. For I think a lot of people now, you'd rather probably watch it with ads and save $4 or whatever it is, but some people might just really hate ads and like, I'm gonna just rent it for $3.99 still and not have ads.
Give Brandon the money. It was like 5 ads.
Yeah, definitely. There's still certainly times where I might just like, if I'm sitting at home not doing anything, I'm like, I'll throw PlanB up on Tubi and let some ads run. So yeah, if you're sitting at home right now, throw PlanB up on Tubi or Fandango Home and just let it play in the background.
I know what I'll be doing tonight. Philly's already played. I don't know what they're still playing. But do you know that Fandango was started by 2 Penn Staters?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, from Penn State Abington. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. So, I think you're inspiring me. Maybe I'll do something like that. Maybe I'll do Randango. Dandango.
There you go.
Dandango. I Alex.
That could definitely work if someone, especially if they're trying to search for Fandango and they have a typo, brings them to
Dandango. We'll do it. And we'll charge $2.99.
Yeah, there you go.
But you guys got to get your cut.
Yeah, sounds like a good business model to me.
Done. Okay.
Don't forget. Sorry, was it only local theaters, or like where were the theaters that it played at?
For PlanB, I was calling anywhere around the whole country that would play it, and there were a couple local ones. There was one that was in Salt Lake City, screened it. There was one somewhere in Texas. We had one was in Maumee, Ohio. That one surprisingly did really well. I had so many people reach out to me from Maumee, Ohio. Like, I loved your movie. Saw it in the theater.
Maumee, Ohio?
Yeah, it's like Maume. I had never heard of it before, but there's like Maumee Outdoor or Maumee Indoor Theater or Outdoor Theater. I think Maumee Indoor Theater, but yeah, I heard from a bunch of people from there that really liked it. It's great.
Is there a town next to it called Dadi? Is Dadi and Maumee there?
Yeah, no? I don't know. I've never been there. There was a couple, too, that when I wanted these theaters to play the film, I said, like, look, if there was any that were in, like, a 3-hour drive, I told them I would go. I was like, I'll go and I'll talk to the audience after the film. So I did that at a few of them. And then for that Maumee, Ohio one, I did, like, a virtual Q&A where they recorded something with someone that worked at the theater, and they played it after the film. So that definitely helped, I think, get people to go. And then also had some people were incentivized to reach out to me like, oh, I saw this movie and then I saw this guy talk on the movie screen afterwards.
So how did you get, does the theater pay you to do the movie?
Usually they do. To be honest, in the case of PlanB, I did not get any money from that. So I sold the film to Quiver Distribution, and they technically own, not technically, they do still to this day own the U.S. and Canada rights, North American rights of the film. So they were just going to release it on VOD, which I mentioned, like the
Video,
Amazon, Apple, or
video on
buy to
demand.
rent it. And they said we can do it in theaters, but a lot of independent films like that will go to theaters and lose money because you're paying to either rent the theater or you're paying to rent the theater. And then if you do that, you'll, I guess in most cases, get 100% of the ticket sales, but a lot of times that's less than whatever you're renting the theater for.
Right.
Otherwise, you have to really pitch the theater on like why they should play your film over another one, and then the theater's taking a cut, the distributor's taking a cut. There's also a lot of expenses, like making a DCP, which is the file that a theater can play, is super expensive. That is like well over $1,000, maybe $2,000. I haven't made one for a little while. So
It's a different level of film?
it's like the file, the digital file that a theater can play.
I had to Google what it was. Like it's called DCP-O-Matic. Like there's some free programs.
Yeah, so it's definitely easier to make, and there's services that will make it for you. But it's expensive to do, and you have to make that for a theater. You also are obviously making posters, and there's certain things like an MPA rating. If you see a movie come out and it has like the rated R, PG-13, most theaters will require you to do that. That's $2,000 to $3,000 to actually get it rated. So it's super expensive. So Quiver said to me, we'll put it in theaters, but we're probably going to lose money, and then we're going to have to like recoup all that back on the back end.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't really want to lose money on this. And I said to them, if I can get any theaters just to play this and they keep all the money, are you fine with that? And they said, sure, as long as we don't have to spend anything, we don't really care. So I just started calling theaters. I was calling film festivals as well that were playing their festival at theaters that were like the same weekend that PlanB was supposed to be coming out.
Right.
And that was super helpful as well because all of the festivals had contact to the theaters. So I was able to get in touch with some of the theaters more easily. And I pretty much said, if you play the movie, you can keep all the money that it makes.
Right.
And I think at that point, like we had some recognizable actors in it. I said, I'll even go if I'm in the area, if it's like within a 3-hour drive. I drove to Maryland at one point, and the theater, honestly, there that I went to, there were still like barely any people in there.
You should have called me. I would have come.
Yeah, there were some that were packed though. Like the Ohio one was filled. There was one in Texas that I saw pictures of that was like 200 people showed up, which is great.
So did you went to the one in Ohio, right?
No, that one I didn't go to. I went to one that was in somewhere in like the one that was in the Philly suburbs. There was one that was in North Jersey. There was maybe, I'm drawing a blank because at this point it was like a year and a half ago. There was one that was somewhere, I think maybe in the Detroit area. But we had like 9 in total that were playing the film. I went to a few of them, and then the ones I didn't go to, I at least offered to do a Q&A afterwards. And I think that at least helped. I didn't make any money from it, and it was a significant amount of work, but I was at least able to advertise the film as a theatrical release. And it really built awareness because there's all these people that actually got to see it in a theater that went out and hopefully told other people to watch it.
So they either went to the theater or they went to video on demand, right?
Yeah, the people that did see it in the theater, at that point it was already available that same weekend to go rent or buy. So if they went and liked it, they could go tell their friend, hey, I saw this movie and it's actually available to go rent on Apple TV.
And that's the one with this big cast, right?
Yeah, so that was my film PlanB. That's the only film that I've actually directed. And I was the lead producer and I co-wrote the script.
With Jamie Lee and John Heder?
Yeah, they starred in it. So it's a romantic comedy. I'd say R-rated romantic comedy that Jamie Lee is the lead and John Heder's the love interest.
John Heder's the love interest. Yeah, and Kate Flannery. You got all these. Okay, so let's go a little behind the scenes here. So it's John Heder. Okay, I got that. And Shannon and Jamie. What do you do? Call their agents? Or their agents call you?
It's a little bit of a mix. When you don't have any financing, you're going to have to make all the calls. Once you have financing for the movie, people would be surprised at how easy it is to actually cast, because agents will pick up the phone regardless of who you are. If you're saying, I am going to make a pay or play offer, which is like a cash offer. Pay or play means you can make them the offer, and even if some tragedy happens and the movie doesn't get made, they're still getting paid for it.
Wow.
If it's a pay or play offer. So I thankfully have never made a pay or play offer when the movie didn't happen, but I have heard stories where that does happen. So when I was first starting to raise money for this film, I was pretty much doing everything. I was raising money. I was trying to call agents and see if I could get any actors on board. And the agents really didn't take me too seriously. At first, like, I could get an agent on the phone. I would tell them I had a credit on Hereditary, and I used to work at National Lampoon too, which I didn't really talk about. And I produced and directed a bunch of projects for them at this point. This was like pretty much all of those things were like 2018 through 2020. And now this is like 2021. So at this point, it's 5 years ago. I was just starting my process of trying to make Plan B. So I raised some money, but didn't have all of it. And I was trying to cast. And again, the agents really didn't take me seriously, because they'd be like, oh, wait, it sounds great. Like, who's the director? And I would tell them I was the director. And then they would assume it's some kind of amateur movie, because the director usually isn't making those phone calls.
Right.
Usually there's a producer or a casting director. So I ended up not having too much luck. And then once I actually got the film funded and I was ready to officially cast the film, throughout that process of raising money and trying to raise money, I made a lot of connections. There were people that I didn't necessarily know before. One was a producer who's actually based in the Philly area. His name is DJ Dodd, and I brought him on to be a producer. He had produced like 30, now even more, at that time like 30 or 40 movies with some big name actors, and I knew that one of his specialties was being able to cast like name actors. He had a lot of I'd say a lot of connection to the agencies, and also it makes a big difference. When I mentioned when I was making these calls, they could look me up and see that I hadn't directed a film at that time. I directed a short film, and I directed a comedy special and some other stuff. Never directed a feature, and the director's not usually making those calls. DJ would very often make those calls on all of the films he produced, and they could look him up and see that he's worked with Bruce Willis and these big movie stars. So that definitely makes a big difference. And he really liked the script and was able to properly sell it to the agents, where I've had experiences too. There was a time I tried to use a casting director, and I felt like they really just were not properly selling the script to these agents.
Get it. Okay.
And DJ did a great job. Jamie, I kind of got through. Her and I were like talking over social media, and she came on board, and then DJ came on board. And once I had Jamie on first, then DJ came, and he's like, who do you want? Like, we have money now. I had raised all the money, and he's like, the worst they could say is no, we can go out to some big names. And I was surprised at that point. I had worked on bigger scale movies like Hereditary, where the actors are getting paid significant, like very high fees. And I told DJ who I wanted, and he's like, John Heder seems like maybe he would do something like this. He does a lot of indies, and I really didn't think that we would get John Heder for what we were budgeting. And he read the script and really liked it. DJ called his agents. John Heder wanted to meet with me, and then after we had a good meeting, he said he was in. And then once John Heder came on board, I think that gave us a lot more credibility. Jamie's great in the movie, and she's a really funny stand-up comedian. She's a writer and producer for Ted Lasso and some big TV shows.
Oh, yeah, Ted Lasso.
I think having Jamie on board, who hadn't necessarily at the time been the lead in a movie, was just very interesting to a lot of people, because they're like, wow, she seems like someone that really could break out, and she was super funny in her stand-up and her writing. And I think that got John Heder a little interested. And then once John Heder met with me and we hit it off and he came on board, it went from like a low budget comedy to a John Heder movie. And then when DJ's making these calls to other people like Kate Flannery and Tom Berenger, you could say, yeah, we have a John Heder comedy. It's fully financed. We're filming in a few weeks. And then pretty much everybody said yes at that point. We really didn't get any passes, which was great. Wow. And I will say that, again, we had money and people like to work. So if you're making cash offers, a lot of people say yes if they're available. But at the same time, the script was really good, and that definitely makes a difference. If you have a really good script any of the
It's
finance
true.
movie, you might be able to get an actor to commit for less money than they normally would. Where if the script might not be that good, they might be, the script's not that great, but I could use a payday, and maybe they'll do it if you pay them a lot of money.
Yeah.
I was just explaining scope creep to Dan. That I think that kind of happened with Penny too. Like people thought it was a really good project, and then it kind of builds into something, and you keep well, we might as well make this really good, and people kind of invest, and then it can turn out to be something you wouldn't really have even imagined from the start.
Exactly. I met Alex on this independent film called Penny,
Right.
and I got brought on as a consulting producer, mainly to help out with some things related to the tax credit, and which we can get into a little bit more if you'd like to talk about the tax credit, and some other New Jersey logistical stuff, because nobody else on the film knew how to do those things, and I had met the production company through the Lighthouse Film Festival a while back, and not that I consider myself a tax credit expert, but I just had to do that on PlanB because I had nobody else to do it, and it's expensive to pay someone to do that. So I pretty much had to figure out how to do all that. And through Penny, I agree. It was the same thing. It was. I won't give any details about the plot because the film hasn't come out yet, and we just filmed it a few weeks ago. But I felt while we were shooting it, that all of the actors were really excited to be there, and it looks really good, it sounds really good, and it was a smaller film, but they got some great actors in it. Juliana Margulies is in it. The actors were publicly announced, so I can say that at least. But they got some big names in it for a small movie that was filmed in New Jersey, and it takes place in the 70s, and it looks period, and that's very tough to do too on a lower budget.
That's true. I took place in the 70s. I am in the 70s, so I get it. It's all this is interesting. And by the way, when he says Alex, you all know it's Alex Daly behind the camera. What's your next project?
So
one?
I'd say my next project that's actually coming out. I have a bunch of different things in various stages. So the next project coming out is a film called On a String. It's a comedy film. It premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival. And Joke Zero, my company, is distributing it. So I mentioned that I was expanding a bit into distribution. So after PlanB came out, I really just fell in love with that process of releasing a film and being able to have it come out. And also, not only myself, but I met so many filmmakers throughout that process that just were not happy with the distributors that they went with.
Oh.
And they're like, I released my film and the distributor really didn't market the film at all, and I feel like nobody watched it, and they just threw it up on demand, and it really didn't do too well. And then the distributor obviously has to recoup all their expenses, which a lot of filmmakers don't realize. There's obviously distributors have expenses that they need to recoup if they spend thousands of dollars to get it into a theater, or if they pay a lot of money to make a trailer or a movie poster, things like that. They get recouped off the top. So I was thinking, I love comedy, and I don't really feel like there's a home for comedy films right now. When you think of comedy films, there's not necessarily one hub where you actually would go. There's obviously Comedy Central, or Netflix is actually becoming pretty good, but nothing specifically for only comedy movies.
Right.
So I decided I was going to expand. I spent a lot of the last year throughout 2025 raising some money. Rather than raise money for a movie, I figured I would raise money for my company and be able to actually acquire films that are already finished, opposed to spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on making a movie. I could spend that same amount of money and buy several movies that are already finished, and I can vet them and know that they're good. So the first film that I acquired is called On a String, and the writer, director, and star of the film, Isabel Hagen's a really funny comedian. So that was something that drew me to that project, because I just thought she was really funny, and it was a really great film that won Best Screenplay at the Tribeca Film Festival, which is one of the best festivals in the country.
Is that New York? Right?
Yeah, it's in New York, so it's one of the top festivals. Yes, it's in Tribeca. That film was picked up by Joke Zero, and now I'm working on it. I'm an executive producer on that film. And Joke Zero is going to be distributing it later this year. There's no set date, but it will have a theatrical release in New York City. So I'm also all about working with filmmakers, and I love working with comedians too. So it was very transparent before even picking that film up. I wanted to talk to the filmmakers and see what they were looking for in a release, to see if it's even a good partnership. And they were really excited about having a theatrical release, either in LA or New York. That also does qualify you for awards. And this film, it won Best Screenplay at Tribeca. I feel like it could.
Wow.
Probably not going to win an Oscar, but something like a Gotham Award or an Independent Spirit Award, I feel like are very possible. Hereditary was nominated for several of those. Toni Collette, who starred in Hereditary, won Best Actress for a Gotham Award, which was great, and I got to go to that.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I at least had some kind of connection to that award show, and I went a couple times. Most recently when Hereditary came out, which was like 2018, or I guess it was 19 when that film was nominated for a Gotham Award and Toni Collette won.
People are still watching it.
Yeah, people are still watching it. But that was something that the filmmakers were excited about, and I was able to offer them that. And we're going to be premiering the film in New York City, probably I'm looking at September, but we don't have a set date for it yet.
On a string.
Yes, on a string.
That is so cool.
And that's what I'm looking to do more of. Yeah. I still want to be writing scripts and directing. I have several scripts that I've written, but it's very difficult to get anything made right now. Not that I don't personally have the bandwidth, but like I mentioned with buying a film, why would I spend all this time raising money to make a film when I can actually acquire multiple films for essentially the same price?
Why is it a hard time now to make movies?
I think I got into a little bit before, but with no DVD sales and not a ton of people going to theaters and a lot of like no upfront deals, it's just very difficult for I think the distributors are just buying less and less because they've realized, how many people are really going out and getting a Netflix subscriptions just because there's one new movie that they want to watch. So if you have a Netflix subscription, you're going to watch whatever's on there. But there might be some, like Adam Sandler, he gets a ton of money from Netflix. And I think there's got to be a ton of people that get Netflix just because Adam Sandler's movies are only on Netflix. That I feel like
they are?
I believe so. He has a big deal with Netflix where they're pretty much releasing all of Adam Sandler's movies, and they have for years. And you see, Adam Sandler hasn't really had a movie in theaters for that reason.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, he's someone that I would imagine if he had a movie that, like Happy Gilmore 2 that he did, if that came out in theaters, I would think that would have made a lot of money. I'm not really sure. But that's part of the reason. And I just didn't want to... Yeah, I didn't want to necessarily be that responsible for raising all of this money specifically for one film again. I would rather raise some money for a slate of films. That way, if there's one that maybe doesn't do as great, hopefully the other ones will make up for that. Right. So now I still am chugging along as a writer and director, trying to push my projects forward, but at the same time, most of the money that Joke Zero has, opposed to producing a film like PlanB, will be to acquire films like On a String, or there's several others that we're hopefully going to acquire soon too.
So you made reference earlier to something that you did for the film in Long Beach Island, in LBI. And you were hired.
The tax credit.
Yeah. How does that work?
So the way I'd explain a tax credit is that when a film goes to an area to do a production, it's generating a ton of revenue for the economy. If you think about it, I worked with Alex in LBI, Long Beach Island, New Jersey, on a movie, and this was a pretty small film, but we still had maybe like 20 actors and like say 30 crew members that were all living in the area, getting hotels, Airbnbs, eating at restaurants, going to stores in the area, using gas, just doing everything in that area. And local businesses really thrive. Like we say, like catering. You have a catering company that's a local company. There's all these local people that are getting jobs from a production going there. So the government and the states and the cities, they really want film production to go to their area just because of how good it is for the economy. So they'll give you a big tax incentive in certain places. New Jersey now has a 35% tax credit, which means that for every dollar you spend, every qualified dollar, I'll say, because there are certain things that might not qualify, but every qualified dollar you spend, you'll get 35% back in the form of a tax credit. So if you make $1 million movie, I'll say $1 million of qualified expenses, you could get a tax credit worth $350,000 back. And I'd say most filmmakers or independent filmmakers might not have a use for that credit. Like for PlanB, I personally don't have a use for a tax credit. Right. But we got a tax credit for that. It was about like $150 $58,000, I believe is what the one was for Plan B. And once you have the credit, you then, if you have the connections, you might be able to sell it to somebody. But usually what I did and what you might need to do is get a broker. There's a lot of companies that specialize in this, and it's kind of like a realtor for a house. You hire a broker, they sell the tax credit to a big corporation like someone like Apple or Best Buy or Macy's. These are the kind of people that are buying the credit because they, I would imagine, since they have so many stores and they might owe a lot of money in taxes, that if they're buying a credit for a little bit less money, they're saving money ultimately. Like the credit for Plan B, the credit was $158,000 and we sold it for, I believe it was like 90 cents on the dollar. So they're getting a pretty big discount, whoever buys it.
Right.
And it's really a win-win. And for me,
I get it.
Yeah, so there's a lot of films that get made off of the tax credit, and you can even pre-sell a tax credit if you apply and you get approved and you have a certificate from the state saying
you get a tax credit.
This is your tax credit. You can go to a bank or a lender and say, hey, I have this tax credit that I got approved for. We're going to get $200,000 back once the movie's finished or once the movie's released, whatever it might be. And if you give me $180,000 now, I'll give you this $200,000 tax credit when we get it, something like that.
It's pretty cool. That is pretty cool.
Yeah. So
any company can buy that tax credit, right?
Yeah, I guess any company can. It's expensive to do. You need to hire a CPA to do an audit at one point. It's very like hands-on and a lot of work.
Yeah, well,
so
that makes sense.
If it's like a $50,000 movie, it doesn't really make sense to do it. But I'd say if you have a film that's like $300,000 or more, you should apply for the tax credit, and you'll get. If you do everything right, there's a lot of work, and that's some of the stuff that Alex saw me doing. Like for Penny, one thing you have to do is you have to register everybody to work in New Jersey, which is a little bit of a hassle. It's not difficult if you know how to do it, but say an actor might have their own company. Instead of being paid as an employee, they're paid through a loan-out company. And that loan-out company, since it's operating in New Jersey for the shoot, needs to register in New Jersey so they become a New Jersey business. And that way, if they become a New Jersey business, then it will qualify for the tax credit. If you don't register someone, then that expense is not going to qualify, and you're not going to get any of the tax credit for that expense.
Suppose they live in New Jersey.
If they live in New Jersey and you're just paid as like a employee through a payroll company, then yeah, that will qualify. But if you live in New Jersey and you have a company that for some reason is not in New Jersey, then you would still need to register. My company, Joke Zero, I actually started it, even though it operates in New Jersey, for entity purposes. I have it started in Delaware, which a lot of people will do.
Yeah.
And I needed to register Joke Zero in New Jersey, and now it operates in New Jersey. But if I didn't fill out that paperwork to register in New Jersey, then it wouldn't qualify for the credit, even though I live here.
This is fascinating.
Yeah, a lot of people don't necessarily know about tax credits. I am not interested in them at all, to be honest. I would much rather be directing or producing. But through Plan B, I didn't really have anyone to do this, so I had to do all of it myself. Usually you're hiring accounting firms and lawyers, things like that, and I just had to learn how to do it myself. So I became very knowledgeable on the tax credit process, and now I'm able to, which I just started doing, offering services, producing services where I can handle all of that stuff. And I just did that for this film, Penny. Definitely interested in doing it moving forward because there's not that many, I would say, producers that are truly local to New Jersey that actually live in the state that know how to do all of it. There's a lot of companies that do.
Yeah.
There might be companies that have gotten the tax credit.
Accounting firms,
things like that. But I would say like independent producers that know how to do like literally every step from applying to the credit to actually getting the credit. There can't be that many independent producers that have actually done what I've done.
Yeah, that makes sense. But here's a question for you. Ready? Have you ever been in one of your movies?
One of my movies, no. I have not. So I mentioned that I was volunteering and things like that in college. I did some acting work too back then, just to get experience on a set. Never wanted to be an actor. It was funny because I got rid of the theater major and then I got into acting a little bit. I started doing extra work. You mentioned the Rocky movies. Like I was an extra in Creed, the first Creed.
You were?
You can't really see me, but there was a fight scene that I was an extra in.
That's pretty
one
cool.
of the first major fight scene in Creed I was an extra in, which was really cool just as a film student to be able to see like Ryan Coogler, who's now, I don't want to say gone on to bigger and better things, but he is a huge name director now, and he was kind of up and coming thing. Creed, I think, was his first major movie.
Did you get a credit?
No, I was not in a credit for Creed. So you're not really going to get a credit as an actor, as an extra. Maybe if it's a really low budget film, they might do that.
Or you have a speaking part.
Yeah, if you have a speaking part, you'll get credited for sure. I was just in a crowd of like 400 people, so you can't even really see me in that case. But there were some other things I was an extra in, like House of Cards. I was an extra in, not in the credits or anything, but you can see me in House of Cards or Veep, which is a really popular show.
Yeah, I watched Veep.
I had a pretty featured scene in Veep, I'd say, where Julia Louis-Dreyfus is like at some kind of rally. I honestly never watched the show, but I watched the episode. It was
a funny show.
But it was some kind of rally, and she's like walking, and she handshakes like me and one other person that were like featured extras, I would say, which was cool. And I did work my way up a little bit and made connections where I was going to auditions, and I was in a local dentist commercial at one point, and biggest thing I did was this show called Nightmare Next Door, which is one of those like investigation discovery true crime shows.
Right.
And I had a speaking role in one of those shows, and actually at the time, nowadays we've been talking about streaming, but it actually came on TV, and I had a speaking role and could like tell people to watch it. This was like 2016. And I was like, hey everyone, like I'm going to be in this show. I have a speaking line, very small role, but I did have lines on TV, which is cool. Didn't really lead anything. Cool. And then once I got my job working at Palm Star, I was working on like major motion pictures, and was like, if I'm working on big movies like Hereditary, I probably shouldn't be acting in like a local dentist commercial or being an extra in these things. So that dentist commercial was the last thing that I did, because I remember when I got the job at Palm Star, I had the dentist commercial that I auditioned for and booked, and we were filming it maybe like 2 or 3 days into when I was supposed to start working, and I had to tell him, my boss at the time, like, this day, like this night, I'm not available because I'm filming this commercial, but I'm done doing these acting things like afterwards. So I never acted in any of my own projects, except maybe as like a kid with a home movies kind of thing. But any legitimate thing, no. And I haven't done any acting since 2016 when I did that dentist commercial.
It's interesting because you probably know this, that Alfred Hitchcock was in every one of his movies.
I have heard that, and I know there's a lot of directors that will do cameos, and people have said, like, oh, why didn't you put yourself in Plan B?
Yeah.
Like something like Plan B, I totally could have. Even the film Penny that Alex and I worked on, there was a lot of the crew members were extras, and
the line producer was in it.
Yeah, a lot of people were like, yeah, it's fun. My
blurry shoulder is in it for a second.
I was not an extra. I actually did some of the background extras casting for Penny just because I knew some people in the area and pulled things together. It wasn't actually in my job description, but I get excited about that, being able to cast people who are excited about the role. So rather than put myself in Plan B, I was like, there's going to be some actor out there grinding who this is going to really mean a lot to, and for me, I really don't care that much, so I would rather give the opportunity to someone else who really is going to care. Like me back in 2015 or 16 would have really cared and would have been very excited, but me now, I'm not going to be a movie star. I really am not going to. If I'm in the movie Penny, it's not going to really change my life at all, where, who knows, maybe for a struggling actor, that could be their big break. So.
It's interesting finding out who you are on set, too. Like, I went through that, too. I actually ended up helping the art department a lot with, like, props and making fake food and stuff. And, like, I'm not, like, coming from an acting background, so kind of like you, I could give or take it or whatever,
Exactly. I'd say Alex was kind of like the jack of all trades on set. Exactly. And I was thinking, like, who is this guy? Like, I feel like every set should have someone like that, because he was like driving people around. He was
fixing doorknobs, making food.
There's this ham that he made that really like looks like a professional ham that's hopefully in a scene that makes the movie. But he was wearing a bunch of hats, and for me, I was mainly responsible for the tax credit stuff. But again, I produced movies in New Jersey, so there were certain things where people were like, I need help with this. And I was like, I don't have a ton going on. A lot of the stuff I did, I could have done remotely, or I was doing a lot of stuff in prep. And even once we wrapped, I was still doing some stuff related to the tax credit like last week.
I found it interesting, though, seeing like you and me are probably like the only business majors on set or something, or like I have an MBA. So it's interesting to see like you find that niche and be like super useful.
Yeah, we definitely can. Like for me, I was thinking at first, I was like, I can teach someone else how to do this tax credit stuff. And then part of me was like, I don't want to teach anyone, because then I'm not needed.
Right. Well, it's interesting. While while Alex was working on that movie, he was also editing our podcasts.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember I saw Alex
editing
editing some of it, and that I think is when he's like, "Oh, you could totally come be a guest on it," because there was times where I was on set, like behind Video Village with headphones on, and then there was other times where I was like, "Oh, I have some work to do on the computer," and I would go out to like the craft services area and just like sit out there for a few hours. And I remember there was definitely some times where Alex was out there working on the podcast.
Yeah, it's good to find Wi-Fi, because we did a lot of like locations like with old houses they rented, not like a studio situation. So it can be hard to find Wi-Fi, but if you bring your laptop, have a charged battery, you can get some work done in downtime.
Yeah, you definitely can. And there's a lot of different roles I could take on. Like for Penny, I had read the script. I honestly was not really a creative producer at all. Like, I'm happy to watch the cut of the film and give the director notes and things like that. And I think that's really where I thrive in those situations, working with writers on scripts and working with directors and producers on like an actual movie that's been shot that has not been finished yet. Like no picture lock, meaning they're still editing the film. I could definitely give really good notes, and I think that's one of my best spots. But for Penny, I was pretty much brought on to do the tax credit stuff, which I'm not as interested in, but it does pay the bills. Yeah,
it does. It helps to be proficient at something, even if it's not like all your energy's going into it. I mean, it goes into it when you're doing it, but you're thinking about maybe I should distribute this movie.
And for something like Penny, I was not in charge of anything. I was brought on as honestly a work for hire, and it was way less pressure than something like PlanB, where if something went wrong with PlanB, it was my fault. We were filming that during pandemic was still going on, and we had to get COVID testing and everything. If anyone would have got a positive COVID test, they would have shut down the movie. So that was very stressful for me during that. I was the only producer on set for PlanB, and I also was the director. I would not recommend that to any filmmakers. Have someone on set to be the producer.
Wow.
Penny was great because there was definitely I went to set thinking that like I was there in case anything bad happened, I could step up, and I really didn't need to at all. I remember just saying a few times to people on set, like, if you see me standing around not doing anything, that's like really good. That means that you guys are all doing an awesome job. And with Penny, that really was the case a lot of the time. Like, I was certainly expandable on set and didn't necessarily need to be there a lot of the time. And I didn't even go to set every single day. But for PlanB, if I wasn't there, I directed that movie. But in most cases, you need a producer on set who's making all of the difficult decisions and actually running the show, and I'd say shielding the director from all of the bad stuff that's going on, like protecting them and make sure the director doesn't find out about these things that might stress them out. For PlanB, I was doing it all, and it was definitely really stressful, and I wouldn't want to do that again. When's
Penny coming out?
That I'm not sure. So I would say not for a while. A lot of times it might take a year of post-production, but I'm happy to help them with that, but I'm not the one in charge of it, so I'm not really sure.
A lot of people don't realize this, that post-production takes a while. I mean, it does. You got to go through everything, and you got to edit things, and you got to splice things and do all that other stuff. Even for this podcast, Alex does the editing.
Yeah, I know there's so much. For PlanB, we filmed it. Well, I'd say out of everything for making a movie, the most difficult thing is getting money for it. Money to finance the movie is the toughest for sure. Once you have money, you can hire people that know what they're doing to help make the movie good. But for post-production, for PlanB, we finished the movie. We filmed it like July. It was June 2022. We filmed the movie. The movie was totally finished like August 2023. So it took a little over a year to actually do the editing, the sound design, the color, everything like that. Then at that point, you have to find a sales agent who helps you sell the film. You then have to find a distributor. Well, the sales agent will help find the distributor. Then once the distributor buys the film or acquires the film, they there's a whole delivery process, I'll say, that filmmakers don't realize. Some filmmakers end up making a movie and they can't even deliver it, and it just never comes out. But the whole delivery process, it's not as easy as just saying like, hey, here's a link to the film. You have to send them a lot of files, technical files in terms of video and audio files, but also there's a legal delivery where you're sending dozens, even more than dozens of contracts, every agreement for the film, a lot of other contracts. You need to get E&O insurance, which is upwards of $5,000 that the filmmaker has to pay for that you don't think about. The MPA rating, which I mentioned a little bit, that's $2,500 to over $3,000 for that. So there's so many different things that a filmmaker has to spend, and a lot of them don't know. And they make a movie and they maybe spend $300,000 on it. And then once it's done, they're like, all right, now I finished the movie, and the distributor picks it up, and they're like, well, now I have to spend another like $25,000 on delivering this film. So that's something I always warn filmmakers about too. Just be prepared that it's expensive and time consuming and a lot of work to deliver a film. Once you deliver a film, it's like a few more months until the distributor will actually release it. But that whole process of delivering a film is a lot of work.
It's interesting because it used to be in a can. That was the expression. It's in the can, right?
Yep, the film, actually film.
It was film. It was real film.
Yeah,
it's not real film anymore.
Sometimes it is.
Is it?
You might be, if you're like a top director, you might have say in that, and you might be able to shoot on film. But it's way more expensive and a lot more work. So a lot of times, everyone is not. I'd say most of the time, people are using digital now, and it makes things a lot easier. Some filmmakers might say it doesn't look as good, which might be true. But you can make something look great with some really good cameras now. I'd recommend shooting with digital.
It's interesting because not only is it's in the can, a film expression that we use, when something's done, it's in the can. The other thing was it's on the floor. It's on the floor means it didn't make the cut. Right?
Yeah, it might be now you'll say on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, on the floor.
And that happens to a lot of things as well. A lot of really good scenes, and happens for actors too. Actors might be in a movie and then they get cut.
Wow. That must suck.
Yeah, for PlanB, I never really cut anyone who had a speaking line. At least if I cast someone, I made sure they at least had at least one line in the movie. But I remember when I was doing some acting stuff, which I mentioned, I was cut out as an actor before, to the point where it's upsetting. And even if I'm like an extra, you could get booked as like a featured extra. There's a difference where if you might just be in a big crowd scene, there might be another time where you are like a featured extra and you actually have a role. You might be like a waiter that comes up to a table and you don't have any lines, but you interact with the characters. Right. And you might get a SAG waiver for that. So SAG is the union, and you'll get paid a little bit more. And if you get enough, I think it's at least at the time, it was 3 SAG waivers, and you can join the union.
That means it stands for Screen Actors Guild.
Yep, Screen Actors Guild. And I remember not my first ever, but within like a week of deciding I wanted to get into acting a little bit, I got a job that was supposed to be like 4 days as a featured extra on this TV show. And I filmed the first day. And I was really excited, thinking like, I'm going to be a movie star probably now, because all of these actors I was working with, they were all professionals, and there was maybe a few of us, and we were like this cool task force. And I told them this was like my first. I was like an extra in like a really no budget movie like a week before, but besides that, I never did anything. And I told them this was like my first thing, and they were all shocked. They're like, "We're all professional actors," and even though they were featured extras, like a lot of the extras are grinding actors trying to make it, and you can make a living with that if you want. I think back then it was like $180 something a day to be an extra, which you can live off of. Now it's probably a lot more. But I filmed one day, I got my SAG waiver and was super excited because some of these actors, they were like, it takes people years to get that, and I got it in like a week. And I was booked for 4 days, so I was going to get SAG eligible just from that 4 days of shoot. And I ended up for whatever reason, the director decided that there were too many of us, and then the next day, my name wasn't on the call sheet. And I just remember I was like crushed, because I went home that night thinking like, wow, I might actually be able to do this. And then I got the call sheet and my name wasn't on it. And it's like 9 or 10 at night, and I'm thinking I'm going to be there at like 6 a.m. the next morning. And I called the casting director like 10 o'clock at night, like, what happened? Like, my name's on the casting or on the call sheet. Is there a error here? She's like, like the director said they only wanted maybe like 3 or 4 of you, and we had like 7 or 8 of you, so a couple of you aren't coming back. And I watched this episode of the show. It was called Allegiance, and it was on NBC. And I think it got canceled after 1 season, but it was like a big show. It was like a network show at the time.
You know why it was canceled?
I don't know why. Maybe
I do,
because I didn't make the cut.
Exactly.
Probably why at this point.
See.
But there was one scene we were all in where we're like running down. It was like around City Hall in Philly, and there's 2 buses, or 2 like I'd say military van kind of things.
Sure.
The 2 main characters in the show get into one van with like 2 or 3 of these background, and then the rest of us get into the other one, and then everyone in the other one just didn't come back for the next day.
Wow.
The ones that made the cut,
bummer.
though, are actually in like 15 minutes of this episode, and one of them actually got a line, which does happen. An extra can get bumped up. There was a guy on PlanB who was an extra, and I gave him a line, and he's in the movie, and he gets a laugh, and he was funny. So I'm all about that, too, thinking
That's great.
Yeah, I was always someone who was like, I would love to just bump up an extra, because I remember being an extra and thinking how great it would have been to be able to get a line, and I saw some other extras get bumped up, and it's just such a cool experience. So I really took it upon myself to do that, and I thankfully was able to do it. If you watch Plan B, there's this scene, mini golf scene, and there's this little kid, and he's got this big, intimidating looking dad, and that guy was an extra, and he crushed it, and he got a line.
That's so cool.
Yeah, the guy just had a great look, and he snaps the golf club in half, and I was like, that's awesome. You can talk. I remember he's like, so would you want me to snap the golf club in half with my hands? And I was like, if you can do that, yes. And he did it. He's in the movie, and it usually does get a laugh.
That is great.
Yeah.
So let me ask you something here, Brandon. We're looking at all these things you've done. Okay, neat stuff that you're going to be doing in the future. What happens if I know people will be watching this and thinking, how do I get to be an extra? How do I get into the movies? What do I have to do? I've been spending my whole life trying to get into film, radio, television, whatever it is, okay? Maybe not radio, but I mean into the movies. What do you advise them to do?
Now I'd say it's easier than ever with social media. You can get in touch with people.
Right.
So Facebook is really good. There's a lot of Facebook groups for actors where casting directors might post like, hey, we need background people. Once you get on set, you can make connections and you can meet people. You see, I'm here because I met your producer, Alex, who was working as a PA on this movie that I was a producer on. So once you're on set, you can definitely make connections, and there might be people like, hey, I'm doing another movie. You want to come with me and work on this next one?
How cool is that? Just make sure he's able to edit our thing,
Yeah, so I would say to try to get out there. If you hear about anything, even if it's a college short film or something like that, just volunteer. Because no one's going to pay someone who has not ever been on a set before and has no experience. So once you get on set, you will meet people. There's different job boards, like I mentioned. Film.org for Philadelphia is great. Most cities or states will probably have some kind of film office. You can reach out to the film office, look at their job board, which is usually just online, and try to just volunteer to get on set. For being an extra, a movie's filming in the area, a lot of times in local newspapers and stuff. Try just to either show up there, or you can see if there's someone's name or production company or something in the really in the article. Another thing for anyone who's actually has some kind of connections and knows people, if you hear about a movie filming in your area, look up the production company. Say, for example, if you say Joke Zero, my company, for example, say there was a local paper that said Joke Zero is producing a movie, call Joke Zero and ask to speak to the production office for that movie of what it is. So say Penny, for example, that was produced mainly by a company called Oakleaf Media. And there was an article that came out during the production of that film that was on Deadline, which is one of the major Hollywood trades. And hypothetically, if someone would have saw that and read the article and said, hey, this is filming in New Jersey, you live in New Jersey, call Oakleaf Media and say, can I speak to the production office for Penny?
Wow.
And whoever answers the phone is most likely either an assistant or an intern or a receptionist, secretary. They have no reason to not pass you to the production office, because if you say, I'm a local crew member and I'm looking to speak to the production office, they're going to put you through 10 out of 10 times probably. And then once you're talking to that person in the production office, like Alex was on set, if hypothetically, if someone showed up, I even told Alex to show up. There was another movie filming in the same area. I was like, you should just show up and tell them you're a PA. And maybe it'll work.
I should have. No, I was just unpaid background. I wasn't able to ascend the ranks, but like I could see in a different situation.
Yeah, something where if you just show up I'm not even saying to show up, but if you call and say, hey, I'm a local PA, do you need anyone? If it's a bigger movie, they always need PAs, and if you're getting paid like $200 a day for a big movie, it's not really going to make or break the production.
That's production assistant, right?
Yeah.
PA. So how do they find the phone numbers? They just look up the company?
You can look it up. IMDb IMDb Pro is a really good reference. So a lot of people might know
I have
IMDb. So everyone knows IMDb for the most part.
Right.
Now you can look up movies or shows. If you get the Pro version, which you do have to pay for, it's like, I don't know exactly. It might be $150 a year or something like that.
Yeah.
If you're actually working in the industry, it's really worth paying for. I have it. Pretty much everyone in the industry uses it. And if you go on IMDb Pro and look up a company, a lot of times it will have a phone number.
Cool. Wow. Brandon Tamburri, you're great, man.
Yeah,
This has been really very cool.
I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I appreciate you being on. Listen, thanks very much. I wish you all the best. Listen, follow him because you're going to see some great things coming out of Brandon and Joke Zero, right? So follow Joke Zero and watch his movies. I want to watch PlanB tonight.
I'll do a little shout out for my project.
Do it.
PlanB. It's on Amazon Prime. It is also on Tubi for free if you don't have Amazon Prime. But Amazon Prime, you can watch it for free if you have Prime. Not free, but if you're paying for Prime, you can watch it.
Right.
Then my company, Joke Zero, definitely check them out. Joke Zero Comedy on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, all of the social media platforms, LinkedIn, at Joke Zero Comedy. Give us a follow and you can just see whatever I'm working on, whatever Joke Zero is working on. And On a String coming out later this year at some point. We also have a podcast as well called the Joke Zero Podcast. That's on all podcast platforms and YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, really everything. And that's pretty much, if you liked what I had to say today, I'd highly recommend that podcast. It's hosted by a very funny comedian named Anna Roisman. I'm on the podcast as the producer, to the extent as the producer Alex on this podcast, where I'm chiming in here and there. And it's essentially a behind-the-scenes look at the film industry. The first season was dedicated to the making of PlanB. So every episode has on a different guest from the film, whether it's a cast member or a crew member. And they'll talk about not only PlanB, but how they got started in the industry, things they would recommend. And then we do always transition into PlanB and talk about some cool behind-the-scenes stories and things like that of what it was like working on the film and how they got involved. But it's pretty much something that I wanted to, have is like something you'd see on the DVD. There's no DVD for PlanB, but this is something that I would have loved to put on the DVD had there been one. And I think it also works as a great standalone podcast. I still get the numbers, and people listen to the podcast on a weekly basis still. Not many, but we might get like 20 listens a week, which I think is okay.
Yeah,
a
it's
year and
good.
a half after the movie came out.
It's good.
Rather than getting hundreds, we're now getting single digits. But that means people still are listening to the podcast.
What's the name of the podcast again?
It's called the Joke Zero Podcast.
The Joke Zero Podcast, okay. And is it also on YouTube? Can you watch it?
It is on YouTube. So it's Joke Zero's YouTube channel. If you go to jokezero.com, everything is linked to there. We did a 20-episode first season along with the release of PlanB, and there will be more episodes in the future.
Beautiful. And you were on episode 46 of Digging for Gold right here.
I'm honored.
I'm honored having you. That's great. And I'll be watching your podcast. It's great.
Yeah, you mentioned Tom Berenger's in one of the episodes. You mentioned the Platoon. He talks about Platoon in the podcast.
That's great. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, Platoon. So, folks, this was a great podcast. I hope you learned a lot about the film industry, acting, what it takes behind the scenes, money in the industry, everything else. So make sure you listen to Joke Zero Podcast, right?
Yeah.
And of course, tell your friends about it and tell your friends about Digging for Gold. Go down to dangoldberg.com and subscribe or follow us on Instagram, on Spotify, on TikTok, and on YouTube. And of course, when you're on Spotify, all the audio platforms carry our podcast. And don't forget this, folks. Use your mind. If you don't, others will. We'll see you next time on Digging for Gold.